watching the Swasth Bharat Telethon, and we're talking about germs and hygiene, and we're joined by Kiran Bedi, former IPS officer, and LG of Puducherry, former super cop. Ms. Bedi, thank you so much for joining us.
Kiranji, this is Amitabh Bachchan. I just have a question. What would you say to the people who are watching today's show? Why they need to be particular about hygiene and what each of them can do in their own space and their ecosystems to ensure that there is a Swachh Bharat?
स्वच्छ रहना तो अपना स्वार्थ है. आप स्वच्छ है तो सब कुछ है. अगर स्वच्छ नहीं, स्वास्थ्य नहीं. स्वच्छता और स्वास्थ्य एक हिस्से के दो हिस्से, एक कॉइन के दो हिस्से हैं. आप स्वस्थ हैं क्योंकि स्वच्छ हैं, और अगर आप स्वच्छ हैं तो स्वस्थ हैं, और फिर उसी से आपका धन और काम आएगा. लेकिन अगर आप स्वस्थ नहीं, स्वच्छ नहीं, धन नहीं आएगा, बल्कि धन आपकी बीमारी पे जाएगा. तो आपका स्वार्थ है. आपका स्वार्थ है आपका स्वच्छ रहना, आपका स्वार्थ है स्वस्थ रहना. तो ही आपके घर लक्ष्मी आएगी. अगर आप वैसे स्वच्छता में बिलीव करते हो, आपकी सोच भी स्वच्छ होने लगती है, आपका व्यवहार भी स्वच्छ होने लगता है, आपकी सराउंडिंग भी स्वच्छ होने लगती है. आप स्वच्छ भाषा बोलेंगे.
In this segment, we're going to now focus on science, because in this last year and a half, I think our respect for science has just gone up tremendously. Who could have imagined that a disease is discovered in a year, and by the end of the year, you actually have a vaccine for that disease? I mean, it's been absolutely incredible. Let's start off by asking Mr. R.S. Sharma about, the pandemic and countering it. And R.S. Sharma, do you think the pandemic has really changed the way we think about health and the role of science and technology in improving access to health?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you that the pandemic had changed the way we look at not only health part, but everything else. For example, the virtual meetings, which are now a norm rather than the exception, have really been accepted, and it has become a norm now. Similarly, the health behavior also, people are doing teleconsultations in much more numbers. People are doing video consultations with the doctors, calling video calls and showing their symptoms and stuff like that. So I think the whole digital has got a push. I mean, pandemic has been a disaster, but at the same time, there is a silver lining also in this, because now people do use technology for their health-seeking, sort of transactions.
This is for Mr. Gaurav Gupta. Can you tell us something about Precision Health Platform and the role that it played in helping Bengaluru fight the COVID?
We have been working with various platforms to make all our programs reach out to the community. We have been actively working with the corporates. We have been working with the resident welfare associations. We have been working with the apartment associations, NGOs, and others. To reach out to them and to emphasize on how prevention is very important when we are talking about COVID. So our objective is to see that nobody gets the infection, and so therefore and everybody is healthy.
Ravi, if you could tell us, since we're talking about technology, what is Reckitt doing? How are they using technology, to make healthcare more accessible?
Yeah, as we have, shifted from Swachh India to Swasth India, it becomes more important to have the digital health records. So the work what we do, this has three kind of interfaces what we have. The first interface is, validating the results. Second is, we have created something called AI bot. It's called Hello Jubi. So Hello Jubi is used by the kids in the schools. There's a big consenting mechanism. So anything on growing up, if you want to know. Third thing is our work on India has a very huge number of key population groups who are impacted and affected by HIV, and there is a huge number of high-risk group in India. So there is an app which we have worked on called Protect QI. In your leisure time, you can actually sit on the app. It takes you around 2 minutes to give answer to 10 questions. It will tell you how much risk you are at. You should go to the nearby HIV testing facility, which all facilities are there nearby. And this is very, very useful, because sometimes you don't have the right kind of guidance available.
We were also joined by Dr. Aditi Hazra. If you could explain to us, what is genomic sequencing? When when you're talking about coronavirus, there's the original virus, then there was alpha, there was all the other viruses, delta, of course. If you could tell us about the importance of genomic sequencing.
Absolutely, it's good to be with you. Genome sequencing is technology that we can use to understand the complete sequence and order of all the genes that make up a living organism. Humans have 3 billion DNA bases. The COVID-19 virus has 30,000 RNA bases, and these bases are represented as chemical letters A, C, G, and U. And so these 30,000 sequences made up the original coronavirus. As it spread from person to person, it was replicating itself. It was copying itself. And occasionally it would make an error in that copy, like a spelling error or a typo in a text message. And that can have a different meaning. And so we have seen during the spring surge that the Delta variant is one of these mutations that allows the virus to be more transmissible. It is attaching to the human cells more robustly, and it has some immune escape. And so we see that variant is now the dominant variant worldwide. And although other variants are emerging, sequencing allows us, it is using technology to detect it sooner so that we can bring localized quarantine, mitigation, and vaccination efforts to reduce the burden of the spread.
Dr. Jyotsna from Reckitt and Dr. Komal from Plan India, I would like to request you to please come on stage with what is a hygiene buddy kit. So what is this kit? Let's see. Ravi, you might want to tell us what is there in this kit. Yeah, please.
Sorry, they are the inventors, so let them tell themselves.
So what we have here is the hygiene buddy kit that we co-created with kids. The idea being that we make learning fun and we try to bring in some elements of STEM learning into hygiene. So it's not just
STEM
about
learning, if you could just explain science and
So STEM learning is basically the emphasis on science, technology, engineering and math. More and more across the world, people are realizing that these are basic skills that kids need to inculcate, because when you emphasize on STEM in education, critical thinking, being able to connect different dots, and we're also we have this kit here where kids have a chance at experiential learning, and these are pretty advanced topics that we talk about when you're talking about education, and we're bringing it to the last mile, and again everything is leading to our mission not to leave no one behind.
And this is also sourced locally from the local self-help groups. Okay. So that it's all it's all paperless. This is also recycled. So we have moved to in the direction where we are moving towards sustainability through the programs. Wow. And both of them have worked with the kids on ground. Fantastic. So the idea came from the kids and they shaped it further.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's how it works.
No, this is brilliant. So this is basically DIY soap.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Fantastic.
स्वस्थ भारत जब रहेगा तभी तो भारत संपन्न बनेगा, भारत संपन्न बनेगा.
I would like to welcome Dr. Jane Goodall on One Health. This is a message: One Health, One Planet, One Future, and social equity and justice are key, and the youth is the hope for the future.
The COVID-19 pandemic has changed our world forever. It's caused so much suffering, loss of life, and economic chaos around the globe. And the tragedy is we brought it on ourselves by our absolute disrespect of animals and nature. We now know that animals are individuals who feel fear and pain. They're sentient beings. Yet we exploit them in cruel conditions in wildlife markets, factory farms, and so on, creating perfect opportunities for a pathogen, such as the COVID-19 virus, to spill over from an animal to a human. And it's the same disrespect of nature that's led to the twin disasters of climate change and biodiversity loss. It's absolutely vital that we develop a new and more sustainable relationship with the natural world.
because we're part of it and we depend on it. But we depend on healthy ecosystems comprised of a complex interrelationship of plant and animal species, a wondrous tapestry of life.
We are also joined in by Craig Foster and Pippa Ehrlich. Pardon my not knowing, pardon my ignorance. Oscar-winning producer, Oscar-winning director of My Octopus Teacher, founder of the Sea Change Project. Thank you very much. What an honor to have you with us right here. Pippa, I want to begin with you. If I can start, your film, My Octopus Teacher, has brought the attention of millions to the oceans. For the longest time, there has been a terrestrial bias. Forests on land have been seen as the most important ecosystem to mitigate climate change. But ocean is the key.
Underwater wonderland, exquisitely beautiful places that we need to protect and still have so much to learn about. And what we do at the Sea Change Project, which is an organization that Craig and I are part of, is we are dedicated firstly to ensuring protection for the Great African Sea Forest, which is the place that the octopus teacher lived and the place that we dive and explore every day. But we're expanding that story now to include kelp forests all over the world, because in the time of climate change, these habitats are the second most vulnerable marine habitat when it comes to climate change.
This is a question for Craig Foster. So what, according to you, is the greatest threat that we face?
So this thing about this cooling of the human heart towards nature, it's this terrifying thing where humans have been disconnected from the natural system, from our original mother, and our whole, our bodies, our minds, our spirits are shriveling in that cooling. And it's what's so critical is that we have this change of heart, that we start to love the natural system again, to love these animals, these creatures, these plants that keep us alive. It's a critical thing. And we've had this reciprocity with nature, deep reciprocity from the beginning of time. All indigenous cultures have this tremendous reciprocity, understanding and love of nature. They would not be able to understand this idea of this cooling of the heart towards this wild mother. It would be unthinkable. So it's quite critical now that we start to, as I say, have a change of heart and move towards all our actions, thinking of that great mother that's keeping us alive.
Mr. Ravi Singh, basically, the IPCC report has alerted a code red. We don't even call it so we've reached a stage of, it says code red for humanity. The WWF did a Living Planet report and it's warned us of the 6th mass extinction. And we need to stop seeing the problem only through the lens of carbon emissions. Am I right? It needs to be seen as a holistic thing, which is biodiversity, carbon, planet, all of it as one big whole.
If you look at it holistically, we need to act with certain amount of speed and some amount of direction in terms of objective. So increased conservation efforts are an order of the day. You've seen the Living Planet report of WWF. We've recorded 68% decline in species or wildlife populations since 1970. And the majority of these have declined in wetlands and areas where we have fresh water. Now, if this is any indicator, the human species is very close to having seen this kind of threat. So, there is need for speed in action, increased conservation and protection efforts. We need to consume more sustainably. We need to produce more sustainably.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Manisha ji, coastal erosion is one of the very major problems that all coastal regions face, but Mumbai in particular is. How are you going about it to prevent this?
So the first is that we need to think about decarbonizing our power, depend less on thermal power, think more about solar power. So it's the energy department that's going to present their plan for a carbon neutral future to the Chief Minister and this council, MCCC. We need to make our transport electric, shared, non-motorized. That is why Maharashtra also has a very comprehensive EV policy. We have all read about it. We need to make our cities livable. We have been talking about it for a long time, but we really need to make that push to make our cities livable. We need to make our industry sustainable in a circular economy kind of a way, and our agriculture sustainable. So I think it's a very, very heartening step that Maharashtra has formed the MCCC.
I'd like to ask a question to Abhishek Chaudhary. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a bit of a trade-off question. So with so many challenges facing us, positive, negative trade-offs, how does one manage to progress on the one thing we need, sustainable growth?
The problem here is that we need to train, we need to young generation to come up and take up this sustainable development as their profession. So we have one of the best brains, IITians in India. They are contributing a lot to software, but we need to also nudge them to enter this sector.
Right. No, absolutely. There is so much that we need to do to get to be sustainable. I just have a question for Saurav Malhotra. You're doing amazing work in the Northeast, in biodiversity protection and restoration, and this is the UN Decade of Restoration. Can you tell us about that, as the Northeast is a biodiversity hotspot in this country? I mean, we have World Heritage Sites there, we have the, biodiversity hotspots there. It's a very, very unique part when it comes to our environment and nature.
For me and for us at the Balipara Foundation, that was founded in 2007 by Ranjit Thakur, one of the prime challenges of the region is that we are losing our forests at an unprecedented pace. In the last 20 years, we've lost 10% of our green cover, which for the region equals the size of the entire country of Bhutan and the entire state of Sikkim. And that in a region where about 80% of the entirety of the population is dependent on agriculture or other forms of livelihoods directly linked to nature is a disaster. So this long-term ecological degradation and loss of our biodiversity is actually the cause for many of the current challenges that we face, including floods and erosion and threatened livelihoods.
So I want to ask Mr. Mishra now, what is, you've been doing this whole thing. What are some of the sort of startling facts, if I may ask, like anything that people will be really surprised by that you've looked at that's come out so far?
I think we are now in a, we are actually developing the index now, and I think the logic for, choosing Northeast was quite obvious. It's more than 80% of, biodiversity hotspots are in the Northeast region, and that's the reason we thought we'll start there. I think what's happening is vulnerability has two parts. One, of course, is what's happening on the globe, which, you can't do much locally, but there's a lot that you can do locally, and what we are calling as adaptability. So, if you are vulnerable, what are you doing at adaptability, and what is the balance is resilience. So, if I am able to do adapt well, then probably I'll be more resilient. So, the whole concept is that.